welcome to this week's REI Deal Breakdown. Today, I'm going to talk about a house that I just wholesaled last week in Poughkeepsie, New York. I'm going to tell you how I found the deal and how new people can really benefit from this strategy. And I'm going to tell you all about how the deal went down, and hopefully you get some value from this. And if you do me a favor, subscribe to my YouTube channel, like the video. If you're listening to this on an audio podcast, if you can share the show with other people and put it on social media, it would really mean a lot to me because that's how we keep growing the content on a weekly basis. If you're not familiar with me, my name's Greg Helbeck. I've been a full-time real estate entrepreneur now for almost 10 years. I've done almost 300 properties at this point. I've done pretty much every exit strategy you can think of. So the point of these videos is to share with you what I've learned so you can benefit from it. And let's get into the deal. So this address was on Rowley Road in Poughkeepsie, New York. It was a completely vacant house. And the way that I found it, which is very, very lucrative if you actually focus on this, and it's doing this. I had this house on a bunch of different lists. It was on the inherited property list. It was on the probate list. It was on the absentee list. It was on all these different lists. But the key here is that I have a software called Envelo. And if you're interested in that, go to enveloapp.com. And the software actually flags down all the vacant houses that are in your database. So the database has hundreds of thousands of properties. I flagged all those to see which ones were vacant, and this property came back vacant. So I saw this, and they were getting mail for me, but obviously no one was calling. And I was like, wow, I got to get in touch with actually the estate representative is here because this seems like a deal. This thing's completely abandoned. It's in terrible shape. The USPS has it flagged as vacant. Like, there's a deal that can be made here. So I end up finding the owner who was selling the property. And ironically, it was an attorney. So the first thing that came to my mind was, crap, I got to go call an attorney. Like, most likely they're not going to take a discount on the property. But I didn't let that limiting belief cause me to not do it or take action. So I said, I'm going to call him anyway. So I found out who the representative was. It's so easy nowadays. I just went on the public record, looked at the executor, looked at the property, saw it was this guy. And I was like, hey, man, I saw that you're the administrator for this estate. I want to buy the property. And he kind of like strung me along for like 3 or 4 months. He's like, oh, I'm not ready to sell it yet. Call me back, blah, blah, blah. So I ended up following up with this guy like a maniac. It's funny. I was calling him, then he wasn't returning my calls. Then he ends up calling me back and he was like, hey, I'm ready to sell the house. And I'm like, okay. He's like, I'm getting a bunch of bids. And I'm like, oh, crap. So now I got to compete with like 10 different buyers. He's like, no, I got 3 or 4 people who are interested. You got to throw your offer in the ring. Typical kind of cattle call. And I'm like, all right, whatever. So I end up making him an offer over the phone. And he told me it needed work, which obviously I could see through the computer. So I'm like, all right, I'm going to make you an offer. And this is contingent upon me seeing it. So I ended up going there and it needed way more work than he thought and way more work than I thought. And he said the foundation was bad. And turns out the foundation was crumbling. I've never seen a foundation like this in my life. Like, it was sketchy to even be in the house because the foundation was so bad. Like, this thing was absolutely toasted, bricks falling in, busted, just complete liability. And I was like, oh my goodness, this is crazy. So ended up seeing it, and I obviously changed my price because I told him the offer was contingent upon me seeing it, so it could change. Turns out I see it needs a lot more work. Him and I were on the same page. I said, listen, I thought the foundation might be buckled, but I didn't think it was actually crumbling into the ground. And he's like, no, I get it. It makes sense. He's like, where would you need to be at? And I ended up telling him a lower number. And I said, I also just need you to let me wholesale this. I don't want to close on this myself. And I've mentioned this on so many of my videos. If you only want to wholesale a house and you do not intend to close on it, tell the freaking homeowner that you're trying to wholesale their house. Do not try to fuck them over and claim that you're buying their house and then you can't find a buyer, then you have to cancel. That's garbage. Don't do that. I said, I could buy this thing, lift the house, do the foundation. I said, that's not my wheelhouse. I like to do rehabs of like 80 to 100K max. This house is going to need 180 grand all day long, 50 just in the foundation, if not more. I said, why don't you let me find a buyer for this thing and I'll wholesale it out. And assuming I find a buyer, it's a done deal, guaranteed, no BS. And he's like, you know what? I'll do that. You seem like a trustworthy guy. So we signed a contract. I went out, put it out to the wholesale list, ended up finding someone to pay me 10K more than I had it under contract for, which was my best offer. Couldn't find any more buyers who were going to pay more than that. And I said, you know what, let me do it. And I ended up getting the buyer to put his earnest money down and we closed the deal like 3 weeks later. No big deal, 10 grand. Normally I make more than 10 grand on wholesale deals. So it was a little bit of a bummer, but you can't go broke making a profit. And the reason this one was extra special is because the deal didn't cost any money. It was completely free. It cost me a little bit of time and the cell phone. I didn't have to pay for direct mail to actually acquire this house. I didn't have to spend a bunch of money to find it or anything. I just used my creativity and my research skills to find out the person who was actually the legit owner at this point. And I made $10,000 with the cost of goods of absolutely zero. So it was pure profit. So it was awesome. So what are some lessons you can learn from this deal? Number one, the really, really, really good deals, in this case, profit might not be really good at 10 grand because usually we make more, but the really, really fucked up deals, I'll say, are the ones that it's hard to get them to call you. You actually have to call them. Like in this case, I had to hunt this seller down and I tracked him down on my cell phone and followed up with them, which is lesson number 2. Sometimes, if not all the time, you have to follow up with leads. Like you're not just going to get these leads coming in, you're going to buy them on the spot. Like that happens once in a while, but most of these deals, you're going to have to follow up persistently. You have to prioritize the follow-up because some people are worth following up with once every 3 months, but then other people you want to follow up with them every week. So in this case, I knew this guy was selling his house and I knew he was selling it to an investor given the condition. And, that was that. Third lesson, make offers sight unseen. But if you truly don't know if you can close sight unseen, tell them the offer is subject to a site walk visit. So I was straight up with the guy. I said, this is my offer, not seeing it. And you're telling me the foundation's bad, but you didn't say it was crumbling. So my offer is this price, but once I see it, I will confirm that. And if the house needs more work than I originally thought, my offer might change. So be straight up when you make an offer. If you want to do a deal sight unseen and have it locked and loaded, no problem, but make sure you can close. In this case, it was subject to me seeing it. I saw the foundation and I said, listen, man, this foundation is shot. He agreed with me. He knew I wasn't trying to take advantage of him. I had no shame renegotiating because he knew that was the case off the bat. And then the fourth lesson, once again, I say this on like every other deal breakdown. If you're going to assign a contract and you don't intend to close on something, tell the seller that you're wholesaling it. This was a freaking attorney in New York, like the hardest typical people to deal with, a New York attorney. This guy let me wholesale the house. He had no problem with it. He knew I was making money. He knew I wasn't the ultimate buyer. He didn't care because I was straight up with him. So be upfront with people if you're wholesaling a house. I'm telling you, no matter whether it's a random seller or an attorney who's savvy, they will let you do it. You will be surprised. And I've been preaching this from the choir for like the last year. Be straight up with people and they will reciprocate. Like when you're honest and transparent with others, people will be honest and transparent with you. It's that law of reciprocity. So that's the property on Raleigh Road. I'll try to attach a picture here so you can see how bad this foundation was because I've never seen anything like it. And if you watch this video and you're in the Hudson Valley or you're in Seattle or you're in Delaware or Reno or San Diego, if you're in any of those areas and you have a house you want to wholesale to me, or if you have a house you want to wholesale with me in JV, I'm looking to do more deals with other people. I'm absolutely interested in looking at your property. Even if the numbers don't work for whatever reason, I'll tell you why they might not work. I'll give you some feedback on it. And if it's a deal, I'll buy it. And if it's a deal, maybe I don't want to buy, but I think we could benefit wholesaling it together. I could talk to you about that. Send me an email, greg@velocityhousebuyers.com, or you can just send me a DM on Instagram @grego37, and I'll see you on the next REI Deal Breakdown. I hope you got value from this. Thanks.